What's up guys, welcome to the Chess Giant. This is Solomon Riddell, and in today's video we're going to be covering a pretty brutal opening trap coming out of the London system in which white has a completely winning game at move 13 against one of the most popular defensive setups from black. Now guys, this isn't a trap that is rarely seen or requires both sides to play something strange and obscure, but follows one of the main variations of the London system. The position the trap starts with has actually been seen 62 times at the Master and Grandmaster level, but it's not used much because most people, even Grandmasters, don't know about it. Now with the London system, guys, we're going to continue and really start the game off with d4, and against knight f6, play bishop f4. Against a move like d5, or really no matter what black plays, we're going to play the moves e3, knight f3, and c3. Part of the reason the London system is so popular, not only being that it's a top tier chess opening for white, but that it's very easy to learn. I mean, we're going to put our pawn on d4, bring our minor pieces out, and really try to create a pawn pyramid here from b2 to d4 and f2 to d4. This is a very solid position for white with really no weaknesses, and it's very hard to play against. Here we see black play the move knight c6, and now we see a Tarrasch Defense type setup from black, just putting their knights on c6 and f6, a pawn on c5 and d5, and this pawn on e6. This is very typical for black against any d4 opening, and now against this, we're simply going to continue with knight bd2 and continue with a move like bishop g3 because of bishop d6. Looking to trade, guys, a move back. We don't want to trade here and let this queen get in the game. We're simply going to play bishop g3, and if black wants to take our bishop on g3, that's completely fine. We're going to take back with our h-pawn, continue with bishop d3, enjoy the fact that our rook on h1 is a very active piece in that position, and we're just playing chess. But here, guys, the best move for black is to not take our bishop, but instead just play a move like castling kingside, in which case we see bishop d3. Notice how our pawns are on dark squares and our bishop is on a light square, d3, taking control of light squares, while our pawns are really trying to control the dark squares of the board. This is just good fundamental chess. We see the move queen e7 from black. And now in this position, I really like the idea of knight e5 from white. This is one of the key ideas of the London system. Throw your knight into e5, and this is a very hard knight for black to deal with. I mean, this knight is currently attacking 4 different squares, and if black takes with knight takes e5, we're simply going to take back with the d-pawn, and now we're attacking 2 minor pieces on d6 and f6, and white is simply winning. Now going a move back, obviously knight takes e5 isn't a good option. What about bishop takes e5? Well, against this, we're going to take with the d-pawn, force that knight back to d7, and then play f4. Talk about control of the dark squares. I mean, these pawns here, this pawn on e5, attacking both d6 and f6. Oftentimes, black's going to play a move like f6, trying to undermine our pawns. And honestly, in this position, we have a ton of different moves we can play. We could play queen h5. We could play queen c2. We could take the pawn on f6. I personally kind of like the move knight f3. Whole idea being after f takes e5, we can simply take back. And yes, it's true. I mean, we do have double isolated pawns, but this pawn on e5 is very strong, very strongly defended by our knight and our bishop. And on top of that, it's really causing a ton of trouble for black, attacking both d6 and f6. We have a very active bishop on d3, and I like white's game here. Now, what happens if a move like b6, for example, is played? Black just trying to get this bishop into the game, trying to fiend shadow it on b7 and get that rook on a8 involved. Well, in this case, I kind of like the idea of queen a4, attacking the knight, and more importantly, preparing queen g4. This is one of the main ideas in this variation. Play queen a4, queen g4, attack g7. We're attacking h7. Our knight can come to g5 on a moment's notice. We can also castle kingside and have a nice rook on f1. We're just playing chess, and I would take white here every single time. So y'all, as we just covered, I mean, this knight on e5 is very hard for black to deal with. What happens if black plays a move like knight d7? And this looks like a very logical move. I mean, this knight here is attacking that knight on e5. They currently have 2 knights and a bishop attacking our knight. But here, it actually turns out that knight d7 is simply a huge mistake. This has been played 62 times at the Master and Grandmaster level. and white is simply better here. We're going to take that knight on d7, and we don't really care which way black takes. They could take with the bishop or the queen. In either case, we're going to take that bishop on d6 and then take that pawn on c5, lure this queen out to that key c5 square, and now we're going to play the crazy looking move, bishop takes h7 with check. What on earth is going on here? Well, the whole idea is that after king takes h7, we're currently down a piece for a pawn, but now we have queen h5 with check, forcing that king back, and then knight e4 attacking that queen on c5. And the very next move, we're wanting to play knight g5, threatening a mate in one on h7. Here I think the best move for black is probably something like queen c4 or queen b5. But what happens if black plays a move like queen e7? I mean, you're probably going to see a move like this a lot. This seems like a very natural move, just bringing that queen back into the defensive action. But it actually turns out that this is a grave mistake. We're simply going to play knight g5 as planned, and now this queen is actually not going to allow this king to get out. In this position, we're threatening a mate in one, and it's actually probably the best move for black to just take the knight on g5, because if black plays a move like rook ft8, giving the king some breathing room, we're simply going to play queen h7 with check, and now, because of this queen on e7, the king cannot get out, and queen h8 is a game over. So y'all, going back to this position, a move like queen e7 may look good, but it actually stops the king from having any sort of breathing room, and that position is resignable for black. So I think here black should instead play a move like queen b5 or queen c4, and in either case, we're going to continue with knight g5, threatening a mate in one. I do want to mention, against the move queen d3, looking to stop the mate in one, we have to remember the key idea of e4. And really, because of e4, I don't think queen d3 does a whole ton. I mean, in this position, this may look very intimidating. In fact, right now, our king can't even move. But at the same time, what can this queen really do now? It can't check our king, it can't take any pieces, and now we can actually gain a tempo on the queen at any time with rook d1, attacking that queen and getting our rook on the action, attacking d5, and eventually maybe even that bishop on d7. So queen d3 doesn't really do a ton because of e4. I think here black needs to play a move like rook fd8, giving that king some breathing room and also defending that bishop on d7. But against this, guys, I mean, we can just take that pawn on f7, continue with queen h5 check, and now after a move like king g8, play rook d1. And guys, this is nearly an impossible position to play with as black. If this rook ever comes back to f8, we have a mate in one. If the rook moves anywhere else, we have queen f7 check, followed by queen takes d7. If this knight ever moves, we have rook d4 attacking the queen, followed by rook f4 taking over the f-file, or rook h4 attacking the h-file, and white has a crushing attack. Now what happens if black just plays a move like a6, something quiet? They can't really move their pieces very well. What if they just play a move like a6? Well, against this, we can actually play f4 and just slowly improve the positioning of our pieces. Our pawn on e3 defends the pawn on f4, which really is solidifying the positioning of that knight on g5, and more importantly, we have rook f1, rook f3, and rook h3 ideas forming a battery ram on the h-file with that queen on h5. This position is crushing for white. So guys, going back to this position, if black plays a quiet move like a6 or b5 or rook c8 against any of these, we can play f4 and try to get our rook involved with rook f1, rook f3, and rook h3. I mean, just getting that rook into the action. And as we mentioned, this rook can't really move because of queen f7 attacking the king and taking the bishop, and this knight can't really move because of the immediate rook d4, followed by putting our rook on f4 or h4. What happens if black plays a move like bishop e8? I mean, just trying to create some kind of defensive presence. Well, against this, we can simply play queen h7 check, queen h8, forcing that king out to e7. We're going to take that pawn on g7, and after a move like king d6, we can simply play a move like b3, attacking the queen. Now notice how if this queen goes to b5 or a6, we actually have knight e4 with checkmate, game over. So this queen really does need to babysit that e4 square, and if we see a move like queen h4, that's fine. We can simply play g3. Again, this queen needs to hold on to e4, and if a move like queen g4, we could play f3, attacking the queen, or even just play knight f7, checking the king on d6. Idea being, after bishop takes f7, we simply snatch that queen, and in this position, we are up a queen and 3 pawns for only 2 minor pieces. I think it's pretty safe to say that white has more than an edge. If you'd like to learn how to play the London system as a whole, click the video to the left. If you'd like to learn how to beat the London system in 3 moves, aka what you should watch out for, click the video to the right. Leave a comment to let me know what other videos you'd like to see covered on this channel. And as always, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching. Peace.